Ladies and gentlemen, please silence your phones and hush your babies. The show is about to start.
Hello everyone, welcome to another Brit Vengers broadcast where we are discussing the response that church lawyers gave us. So, without further ado, let's pull the Brit Vengers out here. Hi everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. So, we've got a lot to cover tonight, but it's been a busy old week since we sent 300 letters to, or over 300 letters to every bishop in the UK. So, Jane, you asked if you could start with some background just to what's going on. If you could just give us that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so Sarah joined the Brit Vengers fairly recently. She's sort of one of the newest kids on the block along with Ruth. Sarah was supporting the work that we had been doing by bringing to our attention things that we hadn't really considered. So the fact that ultimately safeguarding, if there's a breach, it's and we need to make a complaint about that if someone needed to do that, it's the charity trustees of the church who ultimately should be responsible for that. So Sarah started working with us, started speaking with trying to contact a church leader roughly, I think, once a week. Our tenacious lady was checking in and was getting no response. Eventually, she went ahead and just called him and still wasn't getting any of the information that we needed. Now, a while back, we were asked as 21st Century Saints to speak. We've mentioned this before. It's coming up in a few weeks, a national conference on the subject of abuse. And we were asked to speak as members of the church about our safeguarding campaign. As we were preparing to do that, we wanted to give our church leaders the opportunity to say what it is we plan to say at these early stages and to see what they thought, if they have any response to this. We're just sort of fascinated to hear, what are you guys thinking? Or even if you don't have any thoughts you'd like to share, just so that we've kind of told you what we're doing. When we contacted everyone from a sort of leadership level in the UK, so area representatives, people from Europe, the new Women's Council that we're called, actually no one got back. We also copied in the lawyer that Sarah was trying to contact. We also copied in the person in the UK who is responsible for safeguarding. We've been trying to reach him up to this point for quite some time to ask him a little bit about how the helpline itself works. We were getting nowhere. But when we told them we wanted to do this preview of our presentation, we got a reply back. And I've got to admit, we were kind of surprised and, disappointed. We hoped that church leaders were going to attend. We were told that they were going to send 4 lawyers. That's really, I guess, where our story starts. So we presented to the lawyers. We did sort of stress to our leaders it would be really good if our own state presidents and bishops could attend. So we did have our state presidents there. So that happened. Ever since then, we have contacted them with things like the FAQ, our recommendations on safeguarding, giving them information about our website, offering to put them in touch with national charities and specific people who are in a great position to be able to help and support them in their calling. So when we allude to speaking to lawyers from time to time, we also speak to church lawyers. One from Salt Lake City, the area lead counsel, the counsel for the lawyer who is over the safeguarding helpline in the UK, and another external lawyer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for giving us that background. So this working relationship, as it were, has all been kind of not working really.
Well, I mean, a relationship is possibly a big word for it. What would happen generally is we will send them information if we think that they need to know. We have highlighted some safeguarding issues. We want to keep telling you, the date of the conference. They expressed a lot of interest in wanting to know who's running the conference, when is the conference. There was an embargo. We weren't able to give them that information straight away. So that was, I think, the only thing they really wanted to know from us, although they, did say that they were happy to stay in touch. Sort of there wasn't any negativity around it. But to suggest that, we've had a relationship in any way would, I think, be,
Okay.
they weren't really communicating anything to us.
No. They were kind of just dictating the rules of the game as far as the church were concerned to you. Is that fair?
In a very nice way. Like I say, I have a massive crush on at least half of them. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, then we decided that, or I guess it came forward that the bishops aren't really very well informed as to their liability regarding safeguarding, as to the fact that they're the ones responsible for safeguarding in their ward. As we discussed, go check the last episode where we discussed all this about sending the letter. So that letter got sent, and one of those lawyers, those lovely lawyers, got back to you, didn't they?
They did.
Yes.
They did. Okay. So what we'd like to do tonight is share with you all what they said, and we'll go through it bit by bit. We'll break it down. We'll look at what it is that they've said, and I think one of us gets a lovely cameo at the end of the letter as well. So that'll be quite nice. I would like to volunteer Julian, and this is his chance to get the letter up and ready for reading, should he need to give us his lovely tones to read this letter, and I'll pop it up on screen.
So before we start with the letter, could I just quickly just let everyone know? So any discussions that we've had, any questions that we get asked by any church leader, lawyer at any level, is confidential. Any person who's ever come forward, and so the content of any conversations that we've ever had, we're not going to discuss. There's a really clear reason. I think by the time we get to the end of the letter, it's going to be quite apparent why we feel it's really important to talk about this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And at any point you want to stop me, go for that. PD, please.
I just want to say before we start, for everyone, that Jane has promoted herself to like chief sister wife with the middle initial. She is the Relief Society president for the whole church now. That is general conference worthy. Thank you.
Yeah, yes,
You're
no
welcome.
worries. I totally agree. So when we all went over this earlier in the week to kind of discuss it and find out what it was we thought, Julian read it to us in his lovely accent and voice. So I would like to have that happen again, Julian.
Which is nothing like Nemo's accent. That's just a rumor.
It's a rumor. Could you read the opening salvo of this letter, please?
Yeah, sure. Jane and Sarah, it was with some disappointment I read your 30th of January 2023 letter to bishops of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Church. Given our communication to date, I would have expected at a minimum you would have raised your intention to communicate directly with our bishops prior to sending this out to them and publishing it on your website.
Right. Okay. So straight away, the thing that jumps out to me is that he uses the word "our bishops."
Yeah.
There's this weird possessive, well, they're our bishops, they're not your bishops. And it's like, well, hang on. They are bishops for members of the church, and Sarah and Jane are both members of the church. Your thoughts? I think I'm always going to start with Jane and Sarah, and then I'll let everyone else jump in, because obviously this was addressed to both of you.
Quite simply, my thought is, oh crap, what have we done? Did we have a relationship that I didn't know about? Oh my goodness. Because, when there's something important, and let me just be really clear about what those important things are. We get safeguarding risks reported to us all the time, and sometimes members ask us, can we make leaders aware? Sometimes we're asking them, can we make leaders aware? So those are conversations we've had to have. Can we contact you if someone's asked us if we have permission to do that? If there's a child at risk, we will call the police straight away. That's just our position. But there's got to be some kind of discussion here, because we're aware, so many times per week that there's a situation in a ward again that we're being notified about.
Okay, Sarah.
I just saw our bishops. It's great, isn't it? Like, hang on a minute, we're active, engaged members of the church, but they're your bishops. They're not our bishops. They belong to you, do they, in some weird way? And it totally, when they talk about we should have contacted them, well, perhaps if they replied to some of the emails that we started trying to send from September, when we wrote to the trustees, we still had no response from the trustees, and that's from September to January. And we asked, who's the lead trustee for safeguarding and what are your policies and procedures? Because we'd like to be fully aware of what you're doing and what safeguarding instance if you had to report to Charity Commission, etc., etc. No response, no response. Emails pretty much every week from that period to one of the church lawyers, no response, no response. Finally got him on the phone. And when he answered his phone, I said, have you received all my emails? Oh, yes, I have. I said, okay.
Right.
I said, well, so you've had lots of emails from me. What are the concerns? Spoke to him, told him what our concerns were. He said, can you put that in writing? So we compiled a multi-page document that we sent him with all our concerns and what we expected the church to do about safeguarding. We sent that letter on the 17th of October. We have still not had a response to that letter. So I think, hang on, we told you everything you wanted to know. The 17th of October, you still haven't replied to that letter to us. And you're saying that we shouldn't have contacted all the bishops unless we'd spoken to you first. Well, you wouldn't have got back to us. So what was the point?
Exactly. Right, PD?
I was just going to say that this seems like he is having the same reaction towards the bishops that we are having towards vulnerable members and vulnerable people, children, full stop. We are asking for a gate, a gatekeeper that will protect these children, but the lawyers are only interested in protecting their bishops because it's the bishops who do all the groundwork. If they lose the bishops, what are they going to do? And they know that the bishops are vulnerable to these things because they are caring people. And we've all had responses this week from church leaders on a local level, with agreement to this. So I just think it's interesting that he is, as Ruth said in the Ruth Heath said in the comments, he's gatekeeping the bishops. But that's what we're asking for. Don't just worry about your bishops, worry about the flock as well. So
Absolutely. Julian?
I love this letter. It's fantastic, and by the time we finished, I'm sure you'll understand why. There's a song. I don't know if any of you know it, by Al Wilson, called "The Snake." It's a fantastic song. If I had my guitar, I'd play it for you now. The
snake.
It tells a story about a woman that she's going for a walk and she finds this frozen snake by the side of the road. And so she takes this snake that's got really beautiful, pretty coloured skin, and takes the snake into her home, puts it by the fire. It warms up and is revived. And then she's kind of cuddling and stroking this snake. And instead of thanking her for saving its life, this snake bites her. And there's this line in it where the snake speaks to her and says, well, you knew I was a snake before you brought me in. What did you expect? And this letter, I think, is a little bit like this, because we've got these lawyers that came and spoke to Jane and Sarah, and they were, and they both fancy them, and they're these lovely lawyers that they've been really, really positive about. I mean, we have conversations all the time, and they've been really, really positive. And those of you that were watching the channel last weekend know that I got a little bit frustrated because Jane is just so positive about it all. And this letter was, look, you knew we were lawyers. What did you expect? Straight from the offset, they're saying that, aren't they? Look, this letter to the bishops of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in brackets, the church, which will from this point on be referred to as the church. It's a legal document. The lawyers have responded with a legal document. It's just interesting because it's really bad. I don't really think they've earned their money here, because as you'll see, it's poor. I almost wish this was a court case, because there would just be handed their asses. It's so bad.
Right. Okay. Well, on that note, Julian, could you read us the first point, please?
So your communication raises a number of concerns and questions. Number one, how were you able to obtain the personal contact details for the bishops of the church? This raises serious privacy concerns that may need to be addressed. We ask that you respect the privacy of church leaders in future and refrain from sending unsolicited communications. If you wish to communicate with the church or its leaders in the future, you may do so through me.
That is that gatekeeping coming out again, isn't it?
I burst out laughing
Right.
again. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
There's
I
a
can't
really
help-
important point here. It's already been mentioned earlier in the week. 21st Century Saints already brought it up, but I want to show you guys the receipts on this, okay? The question of how were you able to obtain the personal contact details for bishops of the church? Well, we weren't is the simple answer. What we were able to obtain was the addresses of every meeting house in the church, or every ward or branch, and their name. That's it. And you know how we were able to obtain that? It's very simply, you go to this little website here, which is Meeting House Locator. It's the church's Meeting House Locator. Okay? And then let's pick a ward, say Southport in the UK, right? So we've got Southport, UK. Southport ward. It's there. It pops up. So straight to it. It's going to zoom right in. If I zoom in even further, oh, that way. There we go. There it is. And it tells you who the bishop is, and it tells you the address of the ward. Now, what I think the lawyers are struggling to understand is that I went through this entire map, took me several hours, and I clicked on every one of these little red dots, and I took a note of the bishop's name and the address. And that's it. That's all I did. Very simple. The church made that information publicly available. I took a note of it, collated it, and then we used that to send the letters. It's as simple as that. PD?
Can I say, on the point where he says, obviously he's intimating illegal activity and threatening with this may have to be addressed in the future, which so wasn't. But when he says that all contact now with church leaders should be through him, everyone, next time Bishop asks to see you, say, sorry, I can't say anything. I need to contact you through, what's his name? John
And Craig?
Craig. Collywobble Craig. Yeah, I need to contact you through the lead legal counsel for the Europe North area.
Well, can I just say, I went to church this morning because I gave a talk in sacrament meeting, and my bishop said hello and shook hands with me, but he didn't.
Oh.
It was okay. I didn't ask the lawyer if it was okay for me to reply and shake hands.
Problem.
Yeah.
So if he said this raises serious privacy concerns that may need to be addressed, consider them addressed. There's no privacy concerns here. Your organization made that information publicly available. So it was used.
Along in many cases with their phone numbers. So we haven't been calling, I haven't retained, this list. So the other really important part of that story is that actually they expressed this concern for what is a really good reason. Some bishops and their families naturally were, because despite what's happened, lots of bishops, leaders, members are getting in touch because people are talking about this. So really, really honoured that people are willing to reach out to us and ask for some advice. But yeah, a couple of people had asked us. So I would imagine if a couple of people have asked us, then he's going to have had a lot of questions about how that information was given. I'm surprised that he's so shocked about it because, we all know the addresses are publicly available of the buildings. But like I say, in the UK here, church meeting houses, and I've raised this before as something that really frustrates me, the churches are pretty much closed most of the week, most of the time out with this small period of time on Sunday. Most, not all, most don't have a letterbox. There's no way for mail to be delivered to that building. So in some cases, in most cases that I'm aware of, there is a mail redirect that has been set up by the church, so, or the local bishop would know that. And instead of going to the church building, the postman will deliver it to their home, and that will change with every new bishop. Now, sometimes that doesn't even happen because a mail redirect you have to pay for. Very often, the local postie knows who the Mormons are in the community and just drops it in, leaves it at their house. So it's not weird that this has happened. If it's gone to their addresses, again, the church has kind of arranged that to happen. So we don't have any control over what happened to those letters and where they went to, other than we addressed them to the meeting house, handed it to the Royal Mail, and the Royal Mail then distributed them to where they knew someone would get them.
Yeah. PD, then Peter.
I was just going to say, it's a beautiful irony that he's having a do about how we got the addresses, etc. Because we could have trolled Facebook, we could have gone to electoral rolls, and we could have done all sorts of things to get personal details and personal addresses, and we still would not have descended below the church in their pursuit of people who do not want to be found, in sending round on ministry nights brethren and sisters to drag ex-members out into the street and castigate them so that their sins might be forgiven. I just think that the church, like, they've not even got a leg to stand on. They are the worst for breaching boundaries and privacy issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah, unsolicited contact. Well, isn't that what the entire missionary program of the church is built upon? Unsolicited contact.
I've just put a link to a video I did in the chat, and it will go in the description as well, where I've just gone through their new program to find lost members and people in the address unknown file. So for him to say, we ask that you respect the privacy of church leaders in future, well, one, we haven't disrespected it. We've only used information that you made publicly available. And two, how dare you?
Yeah, we're not lost,
you
we're
hypocrite.
hiding.
Julian.
Sorry, Peter was before me.
Oh, Peter. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, no, so that was kind of part of the point I was going to make, that, you know, having been ward clerk in 2 different wards, during our sort of European phase of chasing the address unknown people, which seems to have just kind of been rebooted in America, at least, we've had years of that. And over again, there's, because the church records don't allow you to note on someone's account, these people have requested no contact. We keep blundering into that. Even when they've literally said, please stop contacting us, we still kept contacting them. No respect for that at all, and no mechanism for on the church's system to record a no contact request. You just had to kind of remember it, or some of us started writing that in some of the address lines just so that would even be recorded. And the even bigger elephant in the room is they had a massive data breach in March, whenever it was, in which I think we've decided it's the Russian government, but a foreign government had total access to all of their records of everyone's personal details, addresses, phone numbers and stuff for weeks. That took them weeks to kind of purge out of the system. And then they told us about it afterwards. And they notified loads of people who not only had requested no contact, but who had literally asked for their names to be taken off the records of the church. And they were being informed that their data had just been stolen from the church's records. So, I mean, it's the scale of hypocrisy is epic here in having any kind of complaint about breaches of privacy, which no one's breached because they put this information online. My sort of final point on this is, who runs this church? It's the lawyers. This is a church run by lawyers now. You know, the clergy apparently don't count. You know, what this lawyer is saying is, you can't approach our bishops without our say-so or contact us first. Well, no, that should surely be someone like the area presidency or your stake president, or why can't we talk to our own bishops? You know, so there's a complete sort of overreach of their authority unless they know that actually this is a church run by lawyers. Of course, it sort of is, because several of the apostles are lawyers, but hey.
That links to my point, Peter.
Go on, Julian. Yep.
I'd love to think that this guy's just a bit of a knobhead, and you know, didn't realise. Oh yeah, all the information's there on the website. And yeah, of course. But it's very unlikely. He knows that. This is meant to intimidate you. This is meant to scare you. It's lawyers' tactics, talking about these, how does he put it? A serious privacy concern that may need to be addressed. It's just meant to scare you off. He's not just a knobhead. He's a nasty knobhead.
Okay, thank you, Julian.
Well, carry on.
Julian, we duel at dawn. How dare you? Right? That's just how dare you? So, do you know what? That's not my problem, though. I mean, so yeah, he's a lawyer. He's going to do what he needs to do to best protect the church in the United Kingdom. This is a concern that's being expressed. I am okay with that. I fully support that. But issue one, this wasn't in any way termed as a data breach. No one's ever mentioned that word, and yet what he is alluding to would have been a data breach. So they both need to cover themselves for liability. How the hell did you get this information? Was it from us? Did someone give this to you? No, they haven't anticipated that someone is going to support the safeguarding campaign by actually going and hand typing these in to send Jane, right, this is what needs to go, and yet that's the amount of painstaking work that went into this. And going from the comments as well, this isn't something that we did to piss bishops off. We don't need to contact people across the world to look and see who's got someone in this area and can look it up in LDS tools. That would be, if you want to do that and annoy the church, whatever, but for us that would be unethical and not in keeping with the aim that we are trying to achieve, which is to inform bishops. And I feel like that's what's being missed. It's it's like, you've met us, what our motivation is, and that's what the tone is that's sort of changed in this letter.
PD, a quick one, then we're going to have to move on to
sorry, I was just going to say, if they were worried about us getting addresses that are publicly available and about security breaches, then hold on to your seats, boys. Your heads are going to spin when you see what we've got later.
That is a great tease. Thank you very much.
We got later.
Yeah, there we go. Julian.
Okay. Number 2.
Yeah.
As we earlier indicated, you do not speak for the church, nor are you authorized by the church to be a resource to its leaders. We ask that you make this clear in any of your activities or publications that mention the church in any way. The church will speak for itself, will identify appropriate resources for safeguarding, and will communicate to its leaders information they require to properly serve in their callings.
Go on, Sarah.
There is so much I could say about that. First of all, we have always made it perfectly clear that we do not speak for the church. It's on our website. It's been in any communications we've had with people. We make it abundantly clear. And further to that, I would not want to, and Jane would not want to, be seen to be speaking for the church on issues of safeguarding, because if we were, we would spend our entire time apologising for the dreadful mess that safeguarding is in. We both have professional reputations and credibility in this space, and we do not want to be seen to be speaking for an organisation that has no regard for safeguarding. So the church are very, very safe. We absolutely will not speak on their behalf for safeguarding, because it would discredit us, and we don't wish to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Jane, then PD.
A while back, about what would it have been, 9 years ago now, had the honour of being asked to do an I'm a Mormon video. I didn't speak for the church when I did that. Lots of other people were in the same position. I recently shared on our social media pages, because it's 8 years ago today, my whole family, my husband, who's not a member of the church, on the side of a double-decker bus, being interviewed by local media about how that felt. Still, members are very paranoid about this. The church has managed to keep us super paranoid. And when I was asking someone from the media department, what do I need to know if someone asks me this question? They're basically, look, as long as they're using the right name of the church, you're a church member, you know what you're doing. You're not going to say you don't like us. A little less paranoia would be really good. But yeah, I feel like my reputation as a church member does not require me to walk around my life holding a sign to say I don't speak on behalf of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now, that said, in our work, we do make it clear. The very first thing that we do in our presentation, and this was presented to them, so this is why I do feel a little bit patronised about it, is we make it clear we're not speaking on behalf of the church. Now, short of providing every single thing, every time we go on air, at the top page of every website, short of providing a great big giant disclaimer in red that says, the church has asked us to make this super clear that we are not them. No one's ever made that mistake. No one's ever contacted us by accident to say, oh yeah, we're women. No one is ever going to make that bloody mistake. But if you needed us to do that, all it's going to make you look like as the church is stupid and make the people who are reading it feel patronized and insulted. So what I've done is I've let them know if they want us to go down that road, by all means, talk to us and we will consider it.
There we go. PD, then Julian.
I was just going to say that I would love for the church to send that paragraph to the BBC, CNN, ABC News, whoever it is, every time they do an article about the church. Every time they do an article, especially where they give signposting at the end to outside agencies that can help people who've listened to the story, because bishops might have listened to that story, so they should send it to them if they're that bothered about it. I mean, it's only because it's us and 21st century, you know what I mean? But if they're that bothered about it, they'll send that to every news outlet that runs a story where it doesn't end with we are not official representatives of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and please, no one from the church, no church leaders watch as we put up website links on the screen to send you to safeguarding resources.
And can I just jump in for context? The letter that we sent was sent on 21st Century Saints headed paper, which has a very distinctive, brightly coloured logo, cannot ever be mistaken for the church logo. We never use the church logos or, you know, in our work. And in addition to that, we follow the guidelines set out for media in on the church newsroom for media outlets and how we would speak about the church and use its name correctly.
There we go. Nice. Julian.
Yeah, I love to.
Unlike the lawyers, they call it the church. They're in trouble.
Satan
President
is
Nelson
winning.
must be livid with them. Satan's winning there.
Julian.
Yeah, I'd love to respond to them and say that, you know, if the church did identify appropriate resources for safeguarding and did communicate to its leaders information that they required to properly serve in their callings, the whole thing would be unnecessary.
We wouldn't have needed to give them that. And the final point I'd like to make before we kind of go on to point 3 is that he says, nor are you authorized by the church to be a resource to its leaders. Well, why can't bishops use whatever resource is helpful to them?
Put that on every dictionary.
Yeah, and that's the thing. What translated that paragraph, what they're really saying is, how dare you? We've got the priesthood, you know. You tell us what we should be doing. That's what it really means.
But they did recognise we were a resource.
Yes, they do. Yeah,
recognise we're a resource.
He accidentally validated you.
Accidentally.
There you go.
Ruth Heath's comments interesting.
2 points in and still no concerns for children. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
We are going to come back and address that. I mean, that is going to be super relevant because that's where this is going to build to. But just on the resources thing, actually, in addition, I mean, the original letter is on our website. We've posted it across our social media channels if anyone wants to have a look. If your bishop didn't get a copy and he wants a copy, let us know, and I will make sure that gets to him. In the resources section, what we've done is we've signposted people to the original government guidelines. We've signposted people to the church lawyer, the guy who does the safeguarding hotline, Andrew Ford's testimony, to the recent abuse inquiry in England and Wales, to 2 national charities. And we've also said, look, if you want to ask us anything, we're always here. But we signpost people somewhere else anyway. So this is not about, you know, we're sort of trying to jump in and take some kind of credit for this or want the world to know who we are.
Your mistake was offering to speak because women should keep quiet in the church. Isn't that the scripture? Like, I don't agree with that. What I'm saying is that is the Victorian view of these people. Only the women that have been elevated to, general Relief
Special
Society
area
presidency.
advisors.
Yeah. Only those can speak. Everyone else, shh, take a seat.
Yeah, it's the problem. So before we go on to point number 3, I just want to say to everyone that's watching so far, thank you very much for watching. If you're liking this, jump down into the description and jump down and subscribe, do all the cool stuff. That's it. Plug over. Let's get back on with actually doing the interesting stuff. Right, okay. Julian, point number 3, please.
Right, I'm going to have to break point number 3 up because there's so much gold in it. Okay, so,
I think if you can go up until Bard.
Yeah, I'm there, mate. I've already got it. Right.
Thank you.
Okay, number 3. We are concerned that you have misrepresented the law and potential legal liability to our leaders. As you are well aware, there is currently no legal obligation to obtain a DBS check or a barred list check. Furthermore, as you also know, any liability under the legislation you refer to, the Safeguarding Vulnerable Groups Act 2006, requires that a person knows or has reason to believe that a person is barred.
Oh, where do we even start with that one?
I think, Sarah, you should take that one away and then...
I also think Sarah should start with her credentials.
Yes, Sarah, please.
Do you want me to? Okay. I've worked in this field of sexual harm safeguarding for 25, nearly 30 years with NSPCC, with local authorities, probation service, at the intersection of criminal justice and safeguarding for a long, long time, and have lots of experience of working in this field of sexual harm. So we kind of know a little bit about what we're talking about between us. First of all, we did not at any point ever say that a DBS was legally mandated. The church have made it perfectly clear that they know how to obtain DBSs, that they've been considering how they can use them for the last 3.5 years, that they don't, and they've been perfectly clear they don't use DBSs because they are not legally mandated. So the church have made that position abundantly clear in the testimony that was given to the independent inquiry. What we pointed out was if they do not undertake a DBS, then they do not know whether anybody has a conviction and is barred from working with children and vulnerable adults. And if you allow somebody to work with children and vulnerable adults who has a relevant conviction, then allowing them to undertake that work is a criminal offence. So the lawyers have got a little bit confused here. We haven't said the DBS is legally mandated. What we've said is if you don't do one and you allow somebody to work with children who is on that barred list, then you are at risk of committing an offence. It's a little
and
bit
that's the
different.
bishops. It's the bishops themselves that are liable to that.
Yeah.
Just to make that clear.
Is ignorance a defence?
Well, according to Ruth Heath, fingers and ears is certainly not a defence.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
defend
it is
you.
actually ignorance becomes a defence if you have made a point of not asking.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you and I think that's where the church is almost sort of getting out of this. I don't have to ask. I am not interested in finding this out because then I will be liable to, if I do make this calling. So if we just don't do it, then there's no risk.
Because I'm pretty sure it was Jesus himself that said, "Do ye good unto others only when it is legally mandated." That's I remember that scripture, right? That's just me.
Mass chapter 2 verse 3.
Yeah. Peter and Julian.
So just for our American viewers, DBS is disclosure and barring service. This is in England and Wales, and there are different systems for Scotland and Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, but they all have an equivalent. And this is the agency to which employers can go, and voluntary organisations, to get information about if someone is going to work with young people. You're entitled to request a high-level DBS check, which doesn't just go into convictions, but goes a bit further. Are there previous accusations, things like that, so that someone who might be a threat to children is flagged up at an early stage. Every responsible religion, church denomination and charity in Britain does this as standard. It's absolutely standard. I have to be DBS checked to be a teacher. All the voluntary organisations working with young people are strongly advised by statutory guidance from the Charity Commission that they should seek the highest level of DBS checking for anyone who comes into their category of people, working with vulnerable adults and with young people. So the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is one of the very few that are flatly refusing to do this, and they are open about the fact that they're playing a legal game here. In the statement 3 years ago to the national government inquiry into child abuse in religious organizations, which has been a major issue, the church's representative specifically said, as Sarah mentioned, we know about DBS checks. We understand from recent legislation that our charity trustees should be DBS checked, and we'll look into doing that. We are considering whether to apply it more widely. I think he might have mentioned that an FSY convention had its workers DBS checked before doing a youth convention. But they very specifically said, but technically, this is not an absolute legal requirement, so we're not going to do it. But ethically, morally, they're putting, and this was the point of your letter to these bishops, you don't know if you are putting someone who's already on a sex offender register in positions in primary, in youth, with vulnerable adults, to give them an opportunity to continue abusing. You don't know that. And the church is determined, as long as they can get away with it, not to give you that information, not to facilitate you in even being able to find out. Every time you call someone to work with youth, it's a gamble. And if you did know, you could do 5 years jail time.
Okay.
It's just flagging up. And what should matter far more than the legal position is the ethical position, the morality of not finding out if a person you're calling to primary is a sex offender. And they can do it for free.
Julian, then Jane, then Sarah. Oh, sorry. Sarah, if you want to jump in real quick.
And we absolutely know of people who have been put in positions to serve with youth that have got previous conviction for sexual offending, and that'll
come up in paragraph 4.
And they then abuse. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Don't worry. Julian, then Jane.
Yeah, you've already said it. Really, there's no legal obligation to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, or to administer to the sick. We would hope that a moral obligation would be what really drives us.
Jane?
Okay,
it's a commandment of Jesus Christ not to harm children.
Yes.
Jesus Christ, whose church this allegedly is, said it'd be better that a millstone is put round your neck and you're chucked into the sea if you're going to do anything to endanger children. I mean, what more does this church need?
That is the beauty of it, because you mentioned Peter, you mentioned the ethics. Not only were we talking, was the testimony in that inquiry talking about what the church is and isn't doing, and it was also saying what our position is. The church does not want a change in the law to say that churches should have to legally comply with that. Now that's we can put a link to that. That is stated in that testimony. But the beauty of this, let me just make really clear how we come to this position of knowledge, okay? Sarah has been involved in writing legislation. Sarah knows this stuff. She's been working in this stuff for quite some time. These lawyers we're talking about, I love you, but you don't have a background in working in safeguarding children. I'm really sorry, there it is, but you don't. And so whatever you're finding out, whatever type of legal practice you do, you do not practice this type of law. So therefore, if you have that type, and I'm not going to go into the legalities of that, right? I mean, that's on you guys. You are supposed to find out in the same way that we did. So, we're hearing Sarah. Sarah and I are also going to meetings to make sure this information that we're providing is correct. Peter spent hours and hours double checking, fact checking every single thing that we were thinking, that he was thinking, and bringing that knowledge into line. We are recommending, this is the beauty of this. We could get stuck here in this point about the language around DBS. The thing about, just to really put a fine point on this, actually, if a bishop unknowingly calls someone, he's not liable. Yeah. If he doesn't know, if he hasn't asked the question, And that's the defense. That's the problem. If you knowingly call someone or think that you know that someone might be on that bar list, that's when you're liable. That's when you find, that's when you can go to jail. So these discussions around that, we've had to be so tight on this. We've talked about it with Brick Vengers to make sure that we are being really, really tight. Like I say, there's a lot of agencies involved in making sure this information's up to date. Why the hell are the lawyers not doing it? You want it, and this is the problem that I'm having. We're trying to tell bishops, you have all the power you need to contact your safeguarding board to find out the answers to these questions. You can listen to us, or you can go to the government website, contact your local safeguarding board. There's charities, especially to work with faith communities who know this stuff inside out. Bishops, if you don't believe us, go and ask them, because these lawyers, they are not helping you to keep people safe. And so my problem right now is that these lawyers who are being sent to meet with us, you are getting in the way of keeping children safe.
Yeah.
PD, and then we're going to carry on into point 3.
I was just going to say that this is the roots of the church kind of coming through into today. It's the double speak that Joseph implemented in order to say one thing, but secretly mean another. It's it's the double dealing, backhanded. The Doctrine and Covenants is full of it. It says one thing, but for the leaders, it's another, and it's all kind of how can we get around this evil system that is the governments of the world in order to keep our theocracy going. But what they're missing is they're so wrapped up in their own legal feces that they're missing that the people that are actually being hurt are the children. They're taking home a fat check from tithing dollars, but the guy, whoever's watching this, please just get off your seat for a minute and think of your own kids. All right.
Yeah.
In these situations.
Yeah.
You and the Strengthening Church Members Committee watching it, think about your kids.
But what you would have given for if someone could, with a simple check, have precluded that person from being alone with your child in that room.
Yeah.
That's it.
Julian, could you carry on this?
Yep. Okay, I love this bit. We do not think you can seriously doubt that if a bishop had any reason to know or believe that a person may be barred, that he would nonetheless call an individual to work with children or youth. I'm going to stop it there.
Okay.
Sorry, because I
That's
just want
all
to point out this here highlights perfectly why these people are not suitable to do this job. Because that's the whole approach. The whole approach is, oh, hang on, we're all good people, aren't we? You don't need to put these measures in place. You don't believe that bishops would do anything. I agree that these are really good people. I've grown up, most of my life I've spent in the church, and these people are like, the ward that I grew up in, they know me better than anyone next to my own family. So I know these are great people. And I, don't like to think that this would happen. But then I don't like to think that anybody in the church could abuse young children. But it happens. They do. These things do happen. So he's kind of, you can't seriously believe that this would happen. It's ridiculous. The whole point of safeguarding policy is to put checks and measures into place to ensure that we have done the very best that we can to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely, PD.
Yeah, scenario. I was called as a bishop when I was 23. I was in a ward that I'd not grown up in. I'd been in it for a couple of years, still didn't really know anyone, rubbish with names. And there were older people in that ward who had been in that ward before I was even born. Okay. Say Frank had committed a crime 30 years previous to, me being bishop. Am I to know that Frank committed that crime and was caught? What if Frank was committing crimes outside of church and had been caught, but no one at church knew about it? But then the bishop, it's bishop roulette. How well does that bishop know the ward? Did they grow up in the ward? Have they got a good founding in the ward? Do they know everyone's history and background? No, they don't. Some of them might know a lot. Some of them might know a little. And then it comes down to the bishop's barometer of what is suspicion. Is it just one sister reporting that another brother pinched her on the bottom? Is it an actual crime? What is suspicion? They could get rid of all of this grey and just say, if we have a DBS check, the UK police, the police wherever we are better equipped than bishops to make the decision on who is safe to work in restricted space with children. A regulated activity, that's the one.
So, Sarah?
The church lawyer, when he gave evidence to the independent inquiry, stated very clearly that the church would have no way of knowing if a member of the church committed an offence outside of the church and that was unconnected to the church in any way whatsoever. Well, this is the whole reason why they should be doing DBS checks, and they should have a robust, safe system so they would know that information. It's no good him telling a government inquiry. Well, I wouldn't know, would we? We wouldn't know in the church if somebody had abused a child. Yes, you would know if you bothered to do a little bit of homework and a little bit of due diligence and good practice, you would know.
I think it's just to make this clear to people in the comments, these checks don't cost anything. Like, the church wouldn't have to fork out for these checks. They're free to volunteers. The church could pay for them, but volunteers can get them for free. So, there is a free way they could go about getting them should they choose. Jane?
Volunteers.
We make it super clear in the letter that we know that our bishops are trying their best. They are overwhelmingly good men. All of our leaders are trying to do their best. They're trying to follow the example of Jesus Christ and doing their best with the guidelines that they are given. To suggest that we're indicating otherwise is disingenuous. I've never said this in a podcast because that's the tone that I really want to take. That's the to be heard in this church, we have to use primary voices as women. We have to not be angry, not be confrontational, and to be as gentle in our language as possible. And any communication that we've had with church leaders has been in that vein. What it's meant is that the information that we've sent and we've provided to the lawyers, you've heard the tone, you've heard the support, and you haven't listened to us. And when a moment like this comes, you're quite happy to jump to realize that actually maybe they aren't these nice girls that we thought they were. I genuinely believe that most people are doing their best. But if you're asking me, do I seriously think a bishop or some other leader would knowingly call someone who they knew had hit their wife, had hit their children, or was some kind of potential risk? If you're asking me that, I can testify before the courts and before God himself that yes, that is exactly what I am saying happens.
It is exactly. So,
It happens all the time. It's happening all the time.
Okay, Peter?
Because they don't get the training. There is no professional training. They have such serious roles and important roles in people's lives and these legal liabilities. And another thing that came through really clear in this testimony to the inquiry is they absolutely pile all the duty of care regarding safeguarding onto the stake presidents and onto the bishops, and emphasize that they have autonomy locally and therefore legal responsibility by implication. They, with some guidance and oversight from the area presidency. But it's ludicrous. These people just need to, I think this guy's American, probably sitting in Utah somewhere, managing this from afar and clearly not aware of local law. All he needs to do is look at the news feed for any of his local newspapers, and it's abuse case after abuse case, another bishop convicted of abuse, another high councillor, another stake president and stake presidency member. Several years ago, the bishop, as I said before, in my ward, was arrested and put in prison, the serving bishop, for hoarding and making child pornography. So this bizarre, naive stupidity that, but we're nice people, this wouldn't happen to us, when those are the most abuse is perpetrated by people who have a relationship of trust, who are family members or close friends. By definition, these are the most likely to be abusive, not stranger danger. But there's no training. They offer no training, but they're piling all the legal responsibility onto these bishops and stake presidents and saying, look at they just deal with it. But we're not, and he admits, but we're not informing them about the crimes the people in their ward committed, even though there's a list. And all we have to do is look at the list.
Isn't there a 3-minute
PD
car crash?
I was just going to say, on the training, isn't there a 3-minute video?
No,
No.
PD, because that's going to come up later on. We make it really clear as we talk about that 3-minute long video that actually, no, it's a 30-minute long video, and it's on our website, on the letters we refer to. The training actually, the cartoon, training lasts for 30 minutes.
Right, thanks for clearing that up. Julian, could you carry on, please?
I certainly can. While DBS and other related checks may provide a measure of protection, your communication ignores the multiple other protections the church utilises to ensure that those called to work with children and youth are appropriate to do so. E.g., through the church's annotation tracking system, which tracks those with a history that would make their service with children inappropriate. Communications with prior leaders for new move-ins before calls are extended. Prior counsel among leaders before a call is extended. A thorough searching interview with an individual before call is extended, and a public sustaining before the entire congregation prior to an individual beginning their service. I think it is also significant to note that the IICSA did not even recommend full DBS checks. Rather, they recommended a checking of the barred list.
Right. So,
where do you start?
hang on. So, right. That is a classic case of whataboutism. He's gone straight into, yeah, but what about the other stuff we're doing? Well, we're not talking about that. For a start, we're talking about the area that you're lacking. It's like, well, what about all the armor I'm wearing? It's like, yes, but you're missing a bit, so we need to plug that gap. That's overall the point of the letter anyway. And then just the final line. Well, what's the difference between full DBS checks and a checking of the barred list? The only way you can check the barred list, and then this is the follow-up point. Well, so are we doing them then? Because either way, they've recommended it, so why aren't we doing it?
No, follow what you're saying, Nemo. The only way to check the barred list is
the only way to check the barred list is through a DBS check.
Right.
So either way, a rose by any other name, if you want the checking of the barred list, it's done by a DBS check. So essentially, yes, they were recommending a DBS check. Jane, take it away, please.
Right. So trigger warning, get your vomit bags ready. And I genuinely do mean this, which is going to make it worse. So in the presentation that we had previewed to church leaders and on our website in the FAQ, there's lots of times where we talk about the system of annotations as being fantastic in this instance of a great example of a worldwide system. Lots of faiths just sort of exist in their own communities, and so people who are maybe transient can move to other churches, and there isn't a way that that's sort of joined up, where perhaps a DBS check wouldn't pick it up, but there's been concerns by leaders that haven't perhaps progressed as far as that. So it is a good thing. It's something that we have highlighted as being a good thing. Now, it has problems. It has holes in it. There are discussions that we want to have around that, because, of course, we're not here to sort of say everything's rosy. We're constantly going to be looking for you to do better. We've never fully addressed, actually, absolutely, the fact that a sustaining process happens. We do talk about the interview process as being potentially problematic because, as Julian, you pointed out last week, your research has shown you that paedophiles don't lie. That's correct, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's two issues with this. I think that's hilarious that they've put that in there. A thorough searching interview with an individual before a call is extended. You know, I've been called onto youth numerous times, and I've been called into primary as well. Maybe my memory's failing me, but I can't remember the question where they said, so Brother Heath, can I just ask, are you a paedophile? Or have you ever had any previous convictions for, that would make you unfit for this calling? That doesn't happen, and even if it did, I'm pretty sure paedophiles can lie. It's not a game of guess who, where it's like, has he got a moustache? Yes, he has. Are you a paedophile? Oh, you've caught me. It's ridiculous. It's just a silly suggestion.
It is. It's
How many of
ridiculous.
us have had interviews for callings that were a 30-second conversation in the corridor 5 minutes before we got sustained? I mean, this is a joke, isn't it? There's no relation to how people are called in the church. It's
to be honest,
ludicrous. But
I'm not sure there's much
Julian
else.
pointed out, no one's even asking.
There's not much else to say other than when he says that, you know, they recommended a checking of the barred list, they didn't recommend a full DBS check. Well, we've proved that those two things are the same thing.
Yeah.
And then also why aren't they doing it then? If that's the recommendation, why aren't they doing it? Sarah, and then we'll move on to point 4.
But I don't know, you could just kind of go ballistic about all of this nonsense, couldn't you? But if they are genuinely serious that they recommend their work and all they do, these searching interviews, which they don't do, this robust safeguarding practices they've got in place, why are there so many serving church leaders being convicted of sexual offences? There's scarcely a week goes by without yet another one. Bishops, stake presidents, mission presidents, temple presidents, serving missionaries, you're just hearing them all the time. So if all their systems are so absolutely fantastic, why on earth have we still got people in this church in positions of leadership being convicted of sexual offences?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Can we get paragraph 4, please, Julian?
Okay, point 4. We believe that your statement that, quote, abuse in the church would not have occurred if a DBS check had happened, close quote, is inaccurate and misleading. If you have any real data to support this, I would ask to see it. A detailed study of this very issue has not revealed a single situation where this is the case. In fact, the data we have indicates that the opposite is true. In those rare cases of abuse in the church over the last number of years, none of the abusers would have been discovered by a prior DBS check.
Right, okay. So I just want to frame this, provide a bit of context here. In that letter, 21st Century Saints gave an example of instances in which, had a DBS check occurred, an individual would have been found out to have had prior convictions, who was in a position where they had access to children otherwise. Is that correct?
We use the plural, yes.
Yeah, yes, so multiple, right?
Yes.
So he's saying that's inaccurate and misleading. Well, how does he know? Because you're not saying that he knows that, you're saying that we know that. We have examples. So for him to say that's inaccurate and misleading, well, he has to prove that that didn't happen. Jane, please. I can tell you're Raj.
This is I have two big problems with this email that we haven't covered yet, and this is the first one. Because there's two aspects in that paragraph. First of all, we've already presented to these lawyers about the reasons why cases don't get as far as the church helpline. Most people leave the church. If a bishop even believes that the abuse has happened in the first place, that call may or may not happen. And then whether you're going to term it as abuse or not is it's apparently all in the hands of a lawyer. But what we get from the second, all of us Brit Vengers, from the second you start talking about abuse, people begin to share their stories with you, which is how this safeguarding campaign actually started. It was based on actual human beings. And so let me be really clear, and I expressed this in my reply to Elder Craig. These people are not data. These are people who have experienced the most awful trauma, often within the church, at the hands of people that they felt safe with, in a place where in the whole world you're supposed to be at your most safe. They've been vulnerable at the most crucial times of their life. We're talking about children, we're talking about women, boys, people right across the spectrum of Mormon belief. And most people have left. They don't have any trust in you to come and tell you about it. They've trusted us to tell us. And so what we did was we offered to, if you want to share your stories with us, we can talk a little bit about prevalence. Now, we'd always, with the permission of every person that comes forward to us, we ask a little bit about, would you be comfortable with us recording a little bit of basic information? So that information would be what age you're in. If you're comfortable to provide it, what ward or stake? And if you're not comfortable to provide that, could we say what country it is? with a very, very basic summary. May involve domestic violence, may involve child pornography, paedophilia, whatever are those categories it would fall under. And then we clearly take a record of, we're not here to decide whether someone's telling the truth or lying. We are here just to record what's been presented to us. We then take a record of what the church action was in these cases, and then finally what resources and ongoing communications we are having with these individuals. Sometimes we provide signposting to legal advice, sometimes it's signposting to support services or other organisations. For a person to get that far in a conversation requires so much trust and confidence that they've had in us. And the awful part of it is so many of them would talk to you, Elder Craig.
Yeah.
So many of them are putting such trust in the church, and they're calling us, asking us several times a week, is the church doing anything yet? What's the news? Have they? Because they're not replying to us. And here is where I don't think I've ever been as angry in my life at this part. If it's not you who knows this, Elder Craig, it's the other people that you copied in on that email. The person who holds the calling of supporting members through manning the helpline. You know who they are, right? You know who they are. Their stake presidents know who they are, and you want me to provide their data? Well, they'll do it. They'll do it if you want. So if you would like us to tell you more, we'd always intended to provide the statistical information that we discover. Of course, the church is supposed to act on that. But the moment they want to think that it's so rare and so unbelievable that it doesn't happen, if you want to further traumatize victims and ask them more about what you can do, right, believe me, they're already telling you, and they've made it very bloody clear. We're standing here as their voices. How, you know, the title of this episode and the audacity of us, you know, how dare we send a letter? Elders, lawyers, brothers, how dare you? How dare you put us in a position where we are expected to disclose any information that these vulnerable people have provided to us when they have provided it to you again and again and done nothing? Get out of the equation.
Yeah.
Amen.
If they're not going to help, they should get out of the way. Sarah?
100%. Absolutely. Everything James said, I completely agree with. We have victims that have told us they have written to the area presidency and have had no response. We have sat with parents whose child have been abused, and they have been heartbroken that the area presidency haven't bothered to respond to their letter, when all they want is to be able to tell their child the church is sorry for what they have been through. We have people that really strongly believing Orthodox members of this church that are telling us they are finding it harder day by day to be involved with church because of the abuse cases they know of, and they know of the failings of the church to take action on these. This last week alone, and I kid you not, since we podcasted last Sunday to 10 o'clock this morning, we have had over 12 calls from people concerned about risk issues, victim issues, and really worried about specific things that are going on in their ward, in their church, things that they have experienced. We are absolutely tired of this church now sitting around pretending they care about safeguarding and not absolutely putting anything into practice. And it's back to what I've said since we started this campaign. The 17th of August, we put in writing to the church, the bishops, the stake presidents, the area presidency, the 17th of August, that they needed to start robust training, information in chapels about what to do if you're concerned about abuse, and information for victims to contact people for support, and a request for DBS checks. And from the 17th of August to now, 6 months later, they are still wanting to send letters to us arguing about what they should be doing. We are doing more hours in a week on safeguarding for this church than they are doing, and they are getting paid for it and doing nothing. It's
Jane?
worse, shameful.
Yeah, could I jump in with a couple of quick? I've lightened up. I apologize. Okay, so really important stuff to know that despite everything that's happened in the past week, yeah, people are still coming forward to us. Again, we thank you for the trust that you're placing in us. All of these conversations and calls are confidential. When we allude to them, they're very, very general. And I have to say, it's the same story. We could be literally talking about any victim here in this situation. What we want to let you know is just a quick bit of information about the stats that we are able to talk about right now. So we know that more than, keep in mind, 21st Century Saints is fronted by 4 very brazen women, which doesn't tend to go down very well in the church. It's not very common. So 75% of our listeners are men. Of the people who have contacted us raising a concern, 92% are women. So it's really interesting when you think about that 25% who are not male. The prevalence of women contacting us is massive. So, I mean, I don't know, is that most of our audience who are listening on a particular channel and are women have contacted us? 80% of those people who've contacted us and flagged concerns about individuals, often one person has got concerns about multiple individuals in the course of a call, and they are thinking about several situations that are current. So it's actually quite rare in the information that we're talking about that these things are historic. That said, this information is all important to us. But of those people who are flagging concerns about individuals who may pose a risk, and there are a lot that we are concerned about, who've given us permission to speak to church leaders or decided not, they've looked sort of to be empowered themselves into taking it further. It's women leaders in the church. 80% of the people who are contacting us with concerns about individuals are women leaders in the church who keep getting sort of stonewalled because someone else is taking care of it and that person holds priesthood and they are nowhere in the chain of information. The other 20% are made up of both male leaders and non-members. None of the people who we have concerns about have anything that would qualify as a risk management plan. The most we're sort of hearing, and I would love for to be provided with information that tells us more, to be able to see examples of good risk management in the church. But for the most part, risk management looks like the individual of concern is going to be shadowed throughout church meetings. We have instances of victims who cannot attend their ward anymore because lots of effort is going into making sure that the abuser can attend church, but their needs haven't been considered at all.
Yeah,
It's terrible, and I'd love to see their detailed study. I'd love to see it because he said there's a detailed study that has revealed there is. Well, because he says there is not a single case in which a DBS check would have stopped it. So, as far as he's concerned, DBS checks won't catch people.
Let me pull in Peter, because Peter, you have went through this with a fine tooth comb. In the same way as I reckon other public studies were perhaps not as public or studies that we may think. In the same vein as this, I believe that what is being referred to as Brother Andrew Ford's testimony, who is the safeguarding lawyer for the church, the safeguarding lead and mans the helpline, his testimony to the IICSA inquiry, where he states that exact thing. So I believe that's what he's referring to.
Yeah, and we know that anecdotally. Go on, Peter.
Okay. So to prove that point, did they then do DBS checks? So has whatever their study is checked for prior criminal convictions? Have they really been that organised that they can even make that statement? What we're assuming he's referring to is that in the testimony given to the inquiry, there is some data. Now, the specific tables of information have not yet been made public and released. And we've made a request, I believe, to have the detailed tables that were presented to that national inquiry so that we can actually see what the details of their number crunching is. But ultimately, the point here is they said that in the last 10 years, in 300 congregations, what was the total number of cases of child abuse that actually went to church discipline? Was it 16?
17.
They said
Something like
16 in
that?
2 years.
17.
No, 16
So
in 10
immediately,
My apologies, 16.
yeah. So this is where incompetence kicks in. I'm a teacher. I'm not an expert in this field, but I have basic professional standard safeguarding training at church. I know full well, just from general knowledge, but you can absolutely go and find the detailed statistics, that is a massive underreporting of the percentage of abuse cases you would expect to have in a community of tens of thousands of people in 300 congregations. We know anecdotally from our own experiences in each stake, if you ask around, you will start to hear about the abuse stories. So we know already that that something we could do as an experiment is just people in a few Facebook groups tot up the number of cases just from now or the last few years, and I think we will quickly arrive at a much higher statistic than 16. So this should flag up for any lawyer or any expert in the field or anyone taking responsibility for safeguarding in the church. Apparently, it's supposed to be these charity trustees who are not responding to any contact and seem to be just some office drones somewhere. That's meant to be their job, apparently. You would go looking. You would have a root and branch review of all of your systems, because it would be screamingly obvious that your systems are failing spectacularly to identify or deal with or apply even church discipline, never mind legal consequences, to abusers within your community. That should be incredibly obvious, but you keep hearing these little hints. They think we're better than that. They think the Mormons don't have this problem. They think that because we're all nice Mormon people and we're the true church, we don't really have that many cases of abuse. And that's literally what he's saying here. And all of it screams negligence, incompetence, total lack of curiosity to actually do the research. So as Jane has mentioned,
Because
I wanted to sort of from a state of neutral to fact check the letters going out and the data being put. So I kind of, as an outsider, I was like, right, well, what can I find out just Googling for a day? And I spent a whole day. I went through his testimony to the which is all public information, to the inquiry. I looked at the websites for these charities. I looked at the government website specifying the law. They word it very clearly. They want ordinary human beings to be able to click on a link and fully understand child safeguarding requirements in our country. It's very user friendly. Any bishop could do this, and certainly any lawyer could do this. This guy clearly hasn't. He doesn't know what the laws are. He's misquoting all kinds of things. He's going with some kind of naivety. So I'm asking the question, what is this area advisor lawyer's actual qualification? Because usually lawyers have a website and they say what their area of legal expertise is. Do we know the area of professional expertise of Craig, who has written to you in these terms, and advises the Europe area? What is his area of speciality in law?
Construction law in Canada.
He's Queen's Counsel.
He's King's
You're
Counsel,
kidding me.
but construction law.
Yeah, he went to Oxford.
In construction law.
But he's getting lost in his own rhetoric, because I can imagine that at the point that he's writing this, he's like smashing on the keyboard, his head's spinning, he's puckered everywhere. But he's made such a point of, this has never happened before. But does that mean it won't happen in the future? You know what I mean? That is not a reason not to do it, because it's never happened before.
Yeah,
there are many things that have never happened before.
Before we move on to point 5, I want to make a point based off something that Peter said, which is that, again, he said they lack curiosity, and they do, because this entire attitude the church has is based on, if we don't look, we won't find it, and if we don't find it, we can't get in trouble for it. That is their entire attitude. If we don't go looking to find out if this person's done something wrong, then we don't have to do anything about it. But if we look, we might have to. Which is morally so bankrupt, I can't even begin to kind of comprehend it. But I would just like Julian to go on to point 5 now, because I want to make sure that this podcast runs at a reasonable length for people.
Right, I'm gonna read it, and then I'm gonna jump in with my. I'll give my summing comments after that.
Yes, please.
So,
yeah.
you are misinformed and have misstated how questions on this or other issues are to be addressed in the church. Matters should be addressed with local leaders, not by some sort of appeal to the office of the First Presidency. Once again, you're not authorised to speak on behalf of the church regarding where concerns should be addressed or appealed, nor is the individual that communicated the same misinformation to state presidents previously, whom you obviously collaborate with. Jane and Sarah.
This is the problem what the lawyers have. This is the problem they have got, that they don't like us being associated with any of you. That is
I think you should stick a pin in that, Sarah, because we're going to. I think we should come back to that. Yeah.
I think we should. Yeah.
Julian, you said you wanted to give your summing up points. Please do.
I was going to carry on to his. Sorry, I was going to go all the way through. Should we talk about this first?
Talk about this first. Yeah.
But you know, sorry, you're absolutely right. You know, and it's interesting that all the way through this, really, that's the theme, isn't it? You're not authorised to do this. They're not saying, "Oh no, you're giving us bad advice. Everything that you're saying is wrong." They're not saying that. The problem is you're not authorised to do it, and you associate with apostates. You know, and you just think, well, that's irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant, and yeah, and he goes on to that point actually. So that's what I was going to read on, because it really pushes that home, doesn't he?
On that point, just before you go there, Julian, and we will just send you straight there. I've just brought up the letter from last time, just so you all know what I did say regarding Brooke Hales, who, you know, I'm his favourite person on earth. I said, if you have concerns about how these changes may conflict with church policy, your stake presidents have already been made aware that in cases where matters of doctrinal policy cannot be resolved locally, doctrinal unity can be ensured by an appeal to the office of the First Presidency. The secretary to the office of the First Presidency is Elder Brooke P. Hales, and his email address is here, right? So, that is what Brooke P. Hales told me himself. That is from the very top of the church. So, this guy, this lawyer, Mr. Craig, that's his opinion. But as far as I'm concerned, the Office of First Presidency told me that that's how these things work. So it's not misinformation. But I did appreciate the shout out nonetheless, and his recognition that I did. It tells me that the email I sent to every stake president in the UK made its way back to Area Legal Counsel, which, well, we'll see what we do with that. Jane.
So the Nemo paragraph, as it will heretofore be known, I similar to other statements, if we have said anything at all that is incorrect, then we will immediately go and change it. I mean, we might not go as far as sending a letter to every bishop in the United Kingdom to tell, unless you want us to. I'd be more.
I think we should send a follow-up apology letter.
Correct it directly, but I don't know if it would just.
No, we should send a letter that just has the link to where we got their chapel addresses from, so they know that the church is the one giving it out.
Well, right. So, you know, really, it's summed up with that if you need me to correct any information, and we'll do our homework, we'll make sure that it's incorrect. So we'll go and have a look, as there's a part later on that's incorrect. Immediately we think, oh my goodness, is that something that we need to go and check, because all of the information should be factual? No, I don't believe that it is incorrect. You might not like it, but certainly at no point from what I can see in any of this letter have we breached or broken any church policy. Now, if we did, I believe that the right course of action, well, take up with me directly as you've done. That's brilliant. But also, if I'm doing things that are against the laws or bylaws of the church, then obviously my bishop and stake president, it would be really important for them to know about it so they can counsel with me about it. So yeah, we do direct anyone if there's any concern like that to take it to your leadership.
Yep, I will accept counsel from my bishop and stake president. Julian, please.
Jane and Sarah, this letter to bishops and other items I now see on your website bring into question whether 21st century really wishes to work collaboratively with the church to safeguard our children, or instead has a different agenda that is intended to cause harm to the church and discredit it. Materials on your website, including an open letter signed by 21st century and a number of known vocal critics and detractors of the church, and statements such as, quote, bishops and leaders who were unaware of their role in safeguarding vulnerable groups in their wards and branches, basic safeguarding procedures are not being followed, an extremely poor and wholly insufficient online video which lasts around 3 minutes, and we have been aware of specific instances where people in the UK, Europe, the USA, Canada and around the world have been harmed by these, the church's failings, close quotes, do not appear to us to be those of a partner who wants to support the church and work in a spirit of collaboration with it. Until we are satisfied otherwise, we regret to advise we will not be working with 21st century on these important issues and will advise our leaders accordingly. Once again, it is unfortunate that you felt it necessary to take such a precipitous step without any prior communications with us. Hugs and kisses. Bye.
Funny boy.
Sarah, let that rage out, please.
Oh, let that rage out. 17th of August, numerous letters, numerous emails, numerous requests that they contact us, they talk to us, they listen to our concerns. We tried everything to get the church to take seriously the concerns that we have. We have spoken to them about victims that would like to speak to them and share their experiences and share their stories. They don't even bother to respond to that. How dare they tell us who we can associate with? How dare they actually talk about who we can associate with? And the whole bit about daring to criticise whether we're serious about safeguarding, working in collaboration, when everything we have tried to work in collaboration with them, to provide advice, information, the numbers of times we've been asked for documents, information on this, and that's the bit they're not telling you. There's times we've been said, oh, can you just send me some information on this? Can you send some information on that we've given to priesthood leaders that we know has gone back to them?
Yeah.
And they're still sitting there.
There's a comment I just want to throw on screen, then we'll go to PD, which I think plays to that point. How dare they tell you who you can associate with? Members, ex-members, and never members can all care about safeguarding. Everyone's got a dog in the fight. PD?
Yes.
I was just going to say, as Julian was reading that, something stood out to me. 21st century. I've just looked back at other emails from Johnny Boy, and he calls you 21st century saints, but it's at this point he drops the saints.
He's revoked your sainthood.
Yeah.
So we should all drop. It should be the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to make that point as well.
Oh, sorry.
He knows this is a deliberate thing. 3 times he refers to them as 21st century. What a twat! For somebody like for a church that is so hung up on the name, name's important. That is a deliberate act of aggression. That is a deliberate way to undermine you, and shows, if there was ever any doubt, it shows the complete disdain that they have for what you've done. The man is a snake. He's a snake, and it's so obvious now.
If he writes to me, it'll just say, "Dear dispatchers."
Yeah. Well, you make a really good point, Julian. If I refer to them as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day, they would, we request that you use the full name of our church, please. If I call them the Mormon Church, we request that you use the full name of the church. We are the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They're so obnoxious about they have a whole section of their website dedicated to the correct use of their name, and they cannot show you the basic decency to use the full part of your name.
You should forward him your media style guide that says,
I think you absolutely should.
"We wish to be called."
Yeah, sorry. I don't know why that's got
believe-
me so raging, but it has. Jane.
I believe Julian, I swear I am coming for you with the earrings off if you keep up calling him, because he's my man, right? So to back the hell off, son. And I
Still a
believe
twat.
it's a typo.
No,
I
you
believe
don't.
it's a
No,
typo.
you don't.
No, I don't. Because
Twice.
the
3 times.
typo of
Three
this, the typo of the time that he says that we take the. I mean, because it has to be a typo. You're not really suggesting that we think that that video could be done in any less than 30 minutes, are you? And the
I
fact
could
that
I could crack
did
on
it,
through it in 3 minutes.
I reckon. I mean, I did it in 7.
Do not
Anybody
underestimate
manage to
my
do 7?
ability to be brief. My brevity is what I'm known for.
Well,
PD.
I mean, I have heard some tales, but
Have they reduced
Sorry.
it by 27 minutes then? Because it was a 30-minute animated cartoon, wasn't it, that talked rubbish? Now he's saying it's 3 minutes. Have they knocked 27 minutes off it?
PD.
I was going to say I've spoken with several people, but is there anyone here as teachers? Obviously, Sarah, I know you've done loads of training, but as teachers for basic safeguarding, was it just a 30-minute cartoon that you watched? Is that the industry standard robust training that they put in place? Because
As a clinician, that
No,
wasn't.
it's
I had to
yeah.
do way more than
it's
that.
about it's about for teachers. It's about 2 hours. Even that's sometimes considered a bit inadequate. But it's also about the content. There is only one message in, and they don't even get that right in the animation. The one message is never be alone with the child, but it completely ignores situations of one-to-one interviews, and it also ignores home teachers, ministering visits. If you then go to the frequently asked questions on the page, it's like, okay, well, just if you're putting your young child in a car alone with a man to go traveling around long distances regularly every month, or more than once a month, as a ministering brother, just be careful. That's it. So they've absolutely got a gaping hole in the frequently asked questions in the church training website, not even in the film, regarding that, which would clearly be the
Guys.
ideal grooming.
PD, can I ask you to cede to
And-
Jane for a
and-
moment?
and the
She's
other
about to burst.
Yeah.
because this is the problem. They're getting us into the weeds by talking about something that we've already discussed with them that we actually never said in the first place. That just it's bollocks, that part. So here's what the actual problem is. We sent them all of this stuff. This open letter has been on our website since last August. It was hand delivered. It was also emailed. It has been sent up the chain through different sort of leadership positions. No one apparently has ever actually, I mean, despite the fact that I've witnessed with my own eyes area leaders reading the letter, no one's actually bothered to read it or respond to it until now. And the response has been nothing to do with victims, only to do with what this means about our agenda, because the people who not wrote it, the people who co-signed it, are people who they didn't really like. Now, I'm going to tell you who these people are that they are referring to. It's the people with which we are in good company right now. So we co-sign it as the Brit Vengers, but we have, maybe it's a list of who's who of Mormonism. Nemo the Mormon, Lauren Julian Heath, Peter Bleakley, Priesthood Dispatches, Bill Reel, Radio Free Mormon, Lindsay Hansen Park, Marco Fuentes from Mormon Neurodiversions, Drew Hunter, Natasha Helfer, Lynn Bleakley, Scott from Ramyumpton Ruminations, our Maven Brody, our Katie Moore, who mods Protect the Children, Brian Brees, Dr. Julie Hanks, Charles Lawson, Debbie Coleman, Donnell Allen, Mark. The list goes on, and we're not just talking about Mormon podcasters or people who, church members who are fully engaged. As soon as they've seen your names on that list, they've closed their ears, because we are not allowed to be friends with people who have, issues with the church. We are also not allowed to give you a voice, and they are certainly not going to listen to the fact that you may have had, and likely many of you have had, abuse experiences within the church. If you're looking to shape this landscape, then it's got bugger all to do with you, unless you're going to be nice.
Well said, Jane. Well said. Julian?
There's a really on this point, a really good story in the New Testament where Jesus is accused of casting out devils in the name of the devil, and he says, a house divided against itself can't stand. How essentially saying, how can I cast out devils in the name of the devil? If I'm doing something good, then that comes from God. And this is the same. This is the argument that they're throwing at you here. They're saying, well, how can we listen to you and trust you if you associate with these people? And again, it really just exposes what this is really all about. It's this, and this is the real message here, isn't it? They're not happy that you're involved in this. How dare you? You speak with no authority. The whole kind of tone of this letter is punitive. It's like, wow, we're really disappointed. You've done this stuff, and so now we're not going to work with you. Well, you weren't working with us anyway. You weren't working with us anyway. So who are you really punishing? You're punishing yourselves because you're not going to get this wonderful resource anymore, and you're punishing the people that we're supposed to be safeguarding. And that's the real problem. You're talking about protecting the bishops. You don't give a shit about the bishops. We're the ones that are trying to protect them by doing this. You don't care. You haven't really informed them about their responsibility and their liability. And actually, this is what I love about this whole thing. You've messed up here. You've got this wrong. Okay, you've read the room and you've read it wrong, because the bishops aren't on your side. They're on our side because they care about these issues. Yeah. The general membership of the church, they're not on your side. They're on our side because they've all noticed this. They're all saying, well, why aren't we doing more? So actually, we're the ones that are trying to protect the bishops, protect the members, and protect the vulnerable people. And that's the real point here. This letter makes it so clear. You do care about safeguarding. You do. But not about safeguarding the vulnerable people. You care about safeguarding the name of the church. That's what this is all about. Because it's so obvious.
The letter started, the whole idea of the letter started was when it was realised that bishops are the ones that are legally liable should anything go wrong. And it became patently clear that those bishops did not know that they were the liable ones. And all it takes is for someone like PD in our group to point out that, well, when he was a very young bishop, he didn't know this stuff. And that people in that vulnerable position are being called as bishops. This is because we care about the bishops and wanted to make sure that they understood the ropey position they were in and exactly who it was that had put them there and who it was that could get them out of it. And so that's why it was sent. And the overwhelming response from bishops that we've had has been positive. As we said a week ago, PD, please jump in.
30-second plug. I called the helpline. It is rubbish. It's answered by a lawyer, a solicitor here in the UK. If you call the American number, it's answered by Kurt McConkie. The handbook says it's for to give legal, but also clinicians to help. But there were no clinicians. There was no mention of, we've got this person in place. This is the phone number to call, to give to the victim, to give to whoever immediately. It is just literally covering their own backsides. And the link to that call is in the description below if you want to go take a look. But it is just an arse covering exercise to guard the money, and guard the good, reputation that the church has in the outside world.
And what I want to show to people now is how the church tried to bolt the stable door after the horses had already gone. Right, they tried to close the stable door after the horse had bolted by sending a letter to all the bishops and stake presidents of the UK. Letting them know just what they thought of 21st century saints. After we'd had overwhelmingly positive responses, that's what I mean by closing the door after the horse had bolted. They tried to poison the well after people had already been drinking of it and finding it delicious to the taste and very desirable. PD, go.
I was just going to say, we got this letter before most bishops and stake presidents even opened the email from this letter. Yeah. And if you think that you can just totally put us to one side like that, it's not going to happen. There are people on our side because they want to protect their children as well. They will not be railroaded by church lawyers.
So would you mind if I read this, PD? Is that all right? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, something we were never meant to read, we shall now read. Dear bishops, branch presidents and stake presidents, You likely received a letter regarding safeguarding dated 30th of January 2023 from an organisation called 21st Century Saints. While this organisation consists of some members of the Church, it is not associated or affiliated with the Church in any way and does not speak for or represent the Church. We do not know how they obtained your personal contact information, but are looking into this. While the intention of this group regarding safeguarding may be earnest and well-meaning, their methods are concerning and are often misleading. They also appear to have some alliances with other groups and individuals who actively attack the Church, its doctrines, and its leaders. We recommend that at least for the time being, this group not be used in your safeguarding efforts. If you receive further communication from them, do not feel any obligation to respond, and please let your stake presidents know, who we would ask in turn to let your Area 70 know. We note that 21st Century Saints makes a number of statements relating to your potential liability resulting from not undertaking DBS background checks. We are advised by legal counsel that such checks are not legally required in the UK and that you have no liability for not undertaking them. As you are aware, the Church has a robust safeguarding policy and outstanding instruction and resources available to you in this area. We refer you to our previously provided letter regarding abuse and prevention dated 4th of October 2022, which we attach. We urge you to carefully study, follow, and apply the policies and information referenced therein. We can also advise that we have appointed a committee to consider anything that could be done beyond the current robust policy that would better protect our children and the vulnerable, whilst ensuring we faithfully discharge our primary mission to bring all unto Christ. May the Lord continue to bless you in your faithful service. With love, the Europe North Area Presidency. I want to throw something out there right away, and it comes at the end. It says, they're looking at anything that can be done beyond the current robust policy that would better protect our children and the vulnerable, while still ensuring we faithfully discharge our primary mission, which is not looking after the children or the vulnerable, but is bringing all unto Christ. So that almost sounds like they're saying, what we need to do is work out how we can make sure that paedophiles can still be part of our congregation, so that then we don't fail in that mission to bring all unto Christ, and DBS checks are going to get in the way of that. Those people aren't going to feel like they want to be in our church, so we can't do that. That's almost how that comes across.
But the by law, anyone convicted, everyone's got different conditions, but most of the time they are precluded from going there, like primary schools and different places like that, where there are children and they're given a distance. How is it any different for like a primary classroom? Why should those people be allowed? If they're not allowed within 200 meters of a primary school, why should they be allowed within 200 meters of a classroom just because they want to be near Jesus? Jesus is wherever you want Jesus to be, because Jesus is that good. So for me, they can still come to Jesus from home. They don't need to be with children.
God, just say, one of the problems is because the church is not working effectively with external agencies, they are not talking to the right people to understand about any conditions or risks or concerns about people who may wish to attend church. They're not having the conversations, not having discussions. They're not involving anybody in that has any basic understanding of risk management and safety planning. So that's just, they just don't know what they're doing, and that's garbage. And the other thing, you know what? Let me just say this to you out there, church lawyers and SCMC and all the rest of you that have got nothing better to do than listen to us. Let me just point this out to you. Your bishops and your stake presidents and your Relief Society presidents are not listening to you, because even since you sent that letter, they are still contacting us. We have meetings lined up. They are not listening to you. They are so concerned about what you're doing around safeguard, and they are not listening to you.
There we go. PD?
They're like a booty blind 17-year-old. A young man.
What now?
If you're booty blind, you make poor decisions because you want to impress the girl, But
I see. Okay.
They're blinded by their statistics. They're blinded by the fact that they want more bums in seats. They want tithing money. They want to be seen to be, you know, bringing everyone unto Christ, and to hell with the kids, because the parents are there. Or we'll get a Melchizedek priesthood holder to follow the convicted paedophile around to make sure he doesn't, you know, hurt anyone.
Yeah.
And you're
One
like,
of-
just don't let him in.
One of the mad things about this letter, it says, we do not know how they obtained your personal contact information, but are looking into it. It is so disingenuous. They are essentially responding to a bishop that's gone, oh, this letter arrived to my home. And they haven't gone, oh, don't worry, it was sent to the chapel and we redirected it to your house. They've gone, yeah, I don't know how those pesky kids got hold of your home address. It's so disingenuous and untrue that I can't.
Well, investigating meant that they were going to ask us. Did you get it?
Yeah, they're
So we
looking
told
into it.
They really
Yes, they did
didn't
ask
know.
us.
They really
They did
didn't know.
not just say, how did you get this information? You idiotic
Somebody
people, it's
told
on
them.
your... The trouble is, they've got a lot of information on this church website that they seem to forget about, don't they? And they seem to forget people look at the website and find all sorts of things out.
Here's the thing
Yeah,
for
the
me.
gospel topics essays.
You know,
Go on,
We
Jane.
have, particularly over the past few months, as we're preparing to do a presentation, we thought, you know, if we talk about something we're publicly saying about this, of course they're going to want to know and be aware. The fact that it's embarrassing to me and unacceptable to me that that's what engagement looks like, because you're not responding to our questions about safeguarding, nor the victims who have been trying to get answers from you. Sarah's still, from from way back then, still not had the answers to her questions about the safeguarding trustees who are ultimately liable for all of this. We still don't know if this information is actually being passed to them, as it is the lawyer's duty to give it to them. So as we've continually asked, is there anything that you need us to know? Is there anything that you feel that you would like to comment on? They made it really clear, look, the church will comment for itself if it's got anything to say, completely understandably enough. And so that's all good. But suddenly, now that there is something that they're perceiving as a threat, they're holding up a study, they're holding up whatever. Where was this when we needed to present this information and use it to actually work out what we needed, what advice we needed to provide to the... I mean, even the fact that we've talked about loads of good things are happening with safeguarding. I genuinely mean it. That the committee that's being set up, the approach that the committee seem to be taking, fantastic. But it's almost been like that information has been sort of leaked to us. It feels a little bit dirty, actually, how it's sort of happening and we get to know about it. Nothing in writing. So we've not been able to provide real information that they can actually use. We're doing our best and we're sort of throwing out these broad concerns. So this whole idea that we were ever a resource is nonsense. The reality is people are seeing what we're all doing online and people are talking about it. We're talking about it on our channel and people are hearing Sarah is a church member and she has all of this experience, and okay, she sounds like she's a safe person for me to talk to and get some advice, because the bishop won't tell me, because the elders quorum president won't tell me, and there's something going on here that but I don't feel safe, or I feel like there's this ongoing issue. So yeah, they're neither providing us with the information that we need, but trying to... This is, again, I'm aware that this can be triggering because I'm talking as a church member here, but if indeed the most important thing to Jesus Christ was the vulnerable, and specifically vulnerable children, because this safeguarding campaign is more than about just DBS checks, that's one element. If you actively try to become some kind of barrier in that process, what the hell does that make you? And that's been my big worry in this process. I'm seeing this process as being a barrier. It is certainly not helping the church.
Accomplices.
Well, because this is the thing. Like, if there's this idea that if we push, they're going to go, oh, no, we don't, because we don't respond to outside pressure. And the church does this time and time again. We see it constantly. The church has to get rid of people first, distance themselves appropriately, then implement the things that person was always pushing for in the first place.
And
the
actually,
problem... Go on.
Yeah, sorry, that That actually, if you wanted us to be concerned when you wrote that letter to us, it didn't have that effect. But our biggest concern is, oh God in heaven, are they going to take away the committee? Is there going to be some kind of retribution along those lines? Now, in my reply to Elder Craig, and I will be putting all of this, like across the days on our social media, because obviously we have got a lot to talk about and people still do have questions and they are looking for clarity. And that's really great. And if the church is a good resource to you and you're finding it helpful, rock on. We will highlight the problems that we see as we go. But I mentioned this last week, we have suddenly arrived at a time where bishops are starting to feel empowered. Women in the church callings and church communities are starting to realize actually someone may be listening. I'm going to push a little bit harder or a different way. We're seeing that members of the church who have never been, maybe never Mo's, people who have stepped back from the church, people who are actively engaged in the church, suddenly the only threat in this whole thing is the lawyers. Nobody's saying we shouldn't be doing this. Everyone with one, the Book of Mormon, all of the people with one voice are asking for this to happen. And it is beautiful. And I've never seen anything like it before. And the hearts of some of those people who are calling for this are going to be brought into question by some church lawyers. How dare you? How dare you? The call from PD the other night, which I'm really going to highlight and encourage everyone to go and watch, especially as, let's face it, it may be taken down very quickly. So when you finish here, get your ass over and go and listen while you can. But that call was made by someone who has the experience, who was doing it as an act of integrity. And yeah, you know what? He can't stand the church. There's a lot of trauma attached to that, but he did one of the most brave things that I have ever seen in my entire life. And in this whole past year has been one of the strongest spiritual supports in my entire life. So I am so thankful to the work, not just of PD, but of the rest of the gang here. And yeah, John Dillon, Bill Reel, all of the people who are in the church and out of it who have stood in this space, that's got to be respected and listened to. And I believe it will make all the difference. Something is happening right now. It's awesome.
Thank you. So moving on with final thoughts, I guess, PD.
Just sort it out. I mean, this isn't the end. This is a moment. This is going to keep on rolling. People, the lawyers won't win because even if they don't bring in DBS checks, the people know the rebellion is in the people, and eventually they'll have to give in.
Mm-hmm. Peter, some final thoughts. You are muted.
So there's this guilt by association thing. The on a sort of philosophical religious level, the terrible people 21st centuries that you are hanging out with, our main thing is we are pointing out as critics of the church that church members are being lied to and that they're being manipulated to trust systems and people that are actually not trustworthy, that are deceiving them. What these lawyers have just proven with their own letters is that they lie and they cannot be trusted. These are not specialists in this field. They literally don't know what they're talking about. And they are playing the area presidency. The area presidency is not made of specialists in this area. It's businessmen, sales managers. The area president is a sales manager. These people's qualifications and focus of their training and practice in law is not in this area. So everyone's being played. They have these, if it's the usual way that things go in the church is the old boys network. Your first qualification is that you are faithful and reliable and obedient, and you blow smoke up the right bums and you make things look good. These people have been telling the area presidencies, if they even bothered to ask, but we're assuming we've got it covered. There are no legal liabilities. We've got all this amazing data proving that we're on it and meeting our obligations, and we're keeping things safe here. You don't need DBS checks in our church because we have hardly any cases of abuse, and you don't really need to do anything different. We'll just hold out. We'll be the only church in the United Kingdom that is not DBS checking the people working with children,
Yeah.
because we don't need to. And they are, in sincerity, of somehow convinced, if they even care, the area presidency of this. Area presidency, I'm sorry, you've hired the wrong guys. They don't know what they're doing. And a poo show is heading your way, because there are these massive legal liabilities. Your negligence, there's a long track record of it already. And this shouldn't be any surprise to you, because it's already happening in America. The journalists and the lawyers for decades now have been all over the negligence situation of the helpline and abuse cases and clergy abuse within the LDS Church, and they are suing you for fortunes left, right, and centre. And you think you're safe because these people who you think are all spiritual and lovely, and they are nice people, they're lovely people, they're doing the best they can for not being experts in the field, but they're not good enough. And they've made you incredibly vulnerable. They've made every bishop in the country vulnerable by not practicing these basic safeguarding measures. Your liabilities are epic, and you must know that, lawyers, if you've got any common sense at all, which apparently you don't. Because if you did, you would not be happy thinking that for 10 years, there have only been 16 abuse cases in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the British Isles.
Thanks, Peter.
You have no common sense.
Thank you. Sarah, please.
Where to start? First of all, Elder Craig, check the information you are being given. Drill down into the information that you are being fed from everybody else in the chain of command under you and in the leadership, because there's information that you need to get to the truth of. So check it out. The other thing is that call that PD made the other night that he put on YouTube for people to listen to see just how the church helpline works, and the discussion that we had about that afterwards, I think is probably one of the most important things that has happened in this safeguarding campaign. And I think it's incredible that PD did that, and just love the guy for it even more than I loved him before. Love him even more for that. I think when people listen to that call and get off over that channel, listen to it, pay attention to what's being said, and then listen to how Jane and I discuss that call afterwards, and make your own mind up about how effective this helpline is working in this church. And the other plea that I would make, and this is absolutely a genuine, heartfelt plea, please, the lawyers of this church, the European North Area Presidents, the Area Presidency, please do not punish the vulnerable people of this church by delaying implementing effective safeguarding procedures, because you are angry with Jane and myself, because you are resentful that two women kicked off an activist campaign that has got all the Brit Vengers working with us, standing shoulder to shoulder to fight for the most vulnerable, and that has got people across the whole of the Mormon spectrum and outside the Mormon spectrum working with us, supporting us and cheering us on. Please do not allow your pride, because you don't want to be seen to give in to pressure, stop you from acting to make sure that the vulnerable of this church are protected, because that is what this looks like a whole lot. There's too much history in this church of resenting people that bring problems to the table, then you excommunicate them, and then you implement some of the changes they wanted. Don't delay implementing these changes simply because you're feeling put out because two uppity women dared to speak out and the Brit Vengers got behind us and worked for something useful.
All right, because well, I was just naffing around before this, but I found some real purpose now. So thank you, ladies, for letting me support you in this. Julian, your final thoughts?
So there's been a lot of talk about DBS checks. It's not just about DBS checks. There's lots of other things that are really important here. We need to create an atmosphere of safeguarding in the churches. You know, people need to be aware. There needs to be information up there. You know, the process needs completely overhauling. but DBS checks are really important because they're so simple for us to do. You know, like Peter said, everywhere else is doing them. All the other churches are doing them. It's very simple, and I know that people come forward with this argument of, well, it's not going to catch it out in all cases. It doesn't matter. You know, this is a church that says that the worth of souls is great in the eyes of God. You know, if this stops one child from suffering abuse, then it is worth all of the effort. It's worth all of these conversations. It's worth all of the money that's put into it. You know, the real question is, why aren't we doing it? There is no. I've thought about it. I really do. It might not come across like this, but I really do try my best to kind of put myself in their position, because I don't think these are evil people. I just think that there's fault in their thinking at the moment, and I can't think of it. I can't think of the right reason to do it. So we need to do this. I wish I could address this guy, but I don't think there's any point, because I don't. You know, he's never going to watch this. He's not listening. But there are people that are listening to this now, or that will listen. You know, will listen to it in the future, that are active members of the church, that are, you know, have got friends and family members that are still active in the church. There may even be people listening to this that are in the role of bishop or stake president. And I want to apologise to you, because the church doesn't deserve you. If this is its response to safeguarding the most vulnerable people in our community, the church doesn't deserve you. And so I know that you're with us on this. I know that you realise that this is neglect on their part. So vote with your feet. You know, if you're in that position, if you're a youth leader or a primary leader or a bishop or anything really, then ask to be released. Say, I'm sorry, I need to be released because I don't, you know, I need to do that until you're ready to prepared to put these measures into place. Then I'm afraid I'm going to have to be asked to be released. Now, I know that is a massive ask, and I know that it goes against everything that we've been taught. But I sincerely believe that's what Jesus would do.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Sorry, Sarah, we're going to have to go.
Okay.
Sorry. Right. No. I do have a challenge for everyone, though. After you've gone down to the bottom and hit the subscribe button and hit the like button, after you've gone down there and, you know, done everything you can to support what we're doing here, after you've gone and watched PD's video, I want you to sit and think about doing two things for me. I want you to first sit and think about if your church is standing in the way of safeguarding children. I want you to really think about that. If that is what they're doing, what does that mean for you and your relationship with that church? And then the second thing, and this is really important, more important than subscribing or liking or anything like that. What I want you to do is, if you or someone you know is in a position of working with children in the church, I want you to go out and get a DBS check. I want you to go out, because you're a volunteer for a charitable organisation, get a free DBS check. Don't wait for the church to tell you that you can do it. Don't wait for the church to make it happen. You can go out and do it for yourself right now. Show them that you want this to happen. Show them that you are willing to have this happen, and that the only people that are actually standing in the way of it is not members of the church. It's not the doctrine of the church. It is the church's leaders who are standing in the way. So go and make it happen. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. It's been a great evening, and I hope this helps you. Take care. Bye.